Welcome to Stageworthy. I'm Phil Rickaby, the host of this podcast. This is episode 320. I really need to get better about celebrating milestones. I mean, this isn't one of the big ones. This is a minor milestone, but it is 320 episodes, and that's something to celebrate. So I just want to sit for that for a second because I'm not really good at doing that. So let's just think about the fact that I've done this 320 times. Stageworthy is a one-person operation, so not only do I arrange the guests, I also edit the show, I promote the show, and I even created the music that you're hearing right now under what I'm saying. I also shoulder all of the financial responsibilities for keeping the show going. And while I give this show away for free, it is important to note that doing this is not cheap. It's not something that costs no money. I put out money to make this happen. So if you enjoy this show and if you appreciate the show, please consider supporting it. There are a few ways that you can do that. If you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a review. Your ratings and reviews really do help new people to find the show. If you want to keep up with what's going on with Stageworthy and my other projects, you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to philrickaby.com/subscribe. And you can also leave a tip for the show by dropping some change in the virtual tip jar. I will put a link to that in the show notes, which you can find on the website or in your podcast app. But one of the most important things that you can do, even more important than ratings, reviews, or even financial support, is to share on social media. Even a retweet will help. You can find Stageworthy on Twitter and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website with the archive of all 320 episodes at stageworthypodcast.com. And if you want to find me online, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and my website is philrickaby.com. My guest this week is Stefan Dzeparoski. Stefan is a director and creative producer at Toronto's award-winning BirdLand Theatre. He is best known for his interdisciplinary stage practices merging film, digital, and live performance, and is the founder of the creative startup Digital Dream Society. Here's our conversation. You are a director and a creator of interdisciplinary stage practices, as you've described it. You mix digital and live performance. Can you tell me, when did you first start doing that? And how has that changed for you during the pandemic?
Well, I think that I really never did anything else, actually. Like since I started with theater and live performance, it was always for me mixing different worlds and bringing them together into something that we accept as a live performance. And so my journey started way back in Serbia, and I think like very late 90s or something, when I first attempted this merger of different disciplines and different aesthetics. And when I came to Canada, and when I started my master's at University of Alberta, I found there a very welcoming and like extremely embracing group of people who really wanted to support me in this exploration. And from there on, I simply integrated both like film, digital into my practice and into the way how I read plays and how I interpret them on stage. But of course, with a pandemic and everything surrounded, that shifted drastically and pushed me more into this kind of digital realm when I started exploring more intensely how how the elements of theatrical language can be translated into the digital realm. And so I created a couple of projects with some colleagues from Europe, but also here in Canada that went on and gave some really interesting results. We created a couple of, let's call them like theatrical films with my colleagues in Europe. And here in Canada, I collaborated on a few projects, and the one that I'm really proud of is Internal Iniquity, that went on and won a couple of awards down in the States as a best live stream production.
The issue, not the issue, but the mixing of theater and digital, I think, every so often I've seen people attempt it and try it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But just like with digital theater, I've often seen and heard resistance to the mixture of digital elements, even though in a lot of cases, when it's done really well, it sort of widens the scope of what can be done on stage. I think for some people there is a resistance to that. Is that something that you saw, or was it mostly embraced when you were working on it?
Well, this resistance is present always. It's not just about the digital that we are talking right now. It was present even before, when different elements of like the projected media were used in theater, such as like either a live video or pre-recorded video. There was always this resistance, like, oh, that's gonna overpower, that's gonna overtake the theater, that's gonna overtake the live performance. But to me, it can only enhance what we know about theater, and it can only enrich the language we use in theater. So resistance is there, and it's present, but I don't think we should pay that much attention to that resistance at all.
I do think that there are people who get really tied up in what they will say that theater, quote unquote, is. And they sort of get hung up on theater. If it includes this, it's not theater. If it does this, it's not theater. And more recently, I've just been sort of latching onto the fact that, theater does evolve, theater does change, and theater is what we make it to be. And so it can stand to be online, and it can stand to have digital elements and film elements. It is what we make it.
Yeah, and I don't think that we should separate them. I don't think that we should make this binary division between what is assumed to be a theater and what is assumed to be a digital or film. They are all together now. And I think we are at a very, very peculiar and extremely interesting moment in the evolution of theater, where we are just about to abandon all those binary differences and accept the different modes of expression, the different modes of artistic interpretation, and accept them as one. And it's not that digital theater is gonna overtake the live theater. No, like that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. But it is opening a new venue, a new perspective on what live performance is. For instance, like the show that I did, like that I mentioned, Internal Iniquity. I created that show with a group of people, and we never met before. Like, we never met in person. We communicated completely online. We created show online. There was audience who saw the show, and response was that they felt alive when they saw the performance. So this kind of very antiqued idea of what a live performance is has to change, because we carry in our pockets like the devices that give us this illusion of immediate connection. But when we come to theater, we are like, oh no, that's not part of what we are doing. And I'm like, excuse me, but that's stupid. That's part of your life. So it has to be included in your theatrical experience. And so I really don't like this binary division between what is considered to be a theater and what it's not theater, because I think we as I said, like we are at the moment when we are putting a completely new mind frame on what theater is and what live performance is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I feel like, as we, once again, because we've done this a couple of times already, we start to open the theaters again. There are some people who just can't wait to finally get rid of that pesky digital aspect. And I think that's a mistake. I think that experimenting with digital and some people have a lot of strong feelings about this, but live streaming the theater so that people can like buy a digital ticket for people who can't get to the theater. And also, like, I'm rambling, but I think about all of the shows that have happened in other places in Canada, for example. I just can't get there. Mm-hmm. We would be able to share those things if we could live stream our theater. I think that to ignore the possibilities of what digital gives us in so many different ways is really short-sighted. So I'm curious what you think about the digital theater in the post-COVID world. What do you think we should be doing, and what are you excited to do?
Well, I'm going to go back into things that were done in early ages of the television, where actually you had live theater being recorded and live streamed on television. So you had this incredible setup of multiple cameras and broadcasting things for the sake of people who are not present in the room, but they're going to watch a theater at their homes. And it was like extremely common thing in Europe. Like BBC does that. German television did that. Like even Serbian television did that like ages ago. So it is not that we are inventing something that never existed before. We just have technology right now that it's more immediate, more present, and more efficient in bringing this content live. I remember like when I was a kid, like 7-8 years old, like I used to watch theater shows at my home in Belgrade that were done in Zagreb, Croatia, broadcasted by the television. And so I'm like, what's the difference between that and now? Not much.
No. I think about, the first Shakespeare play I ever saw was on the CBC, recorded from the Stratford Festival, and it was As You Like It, and it was the first time I'd seen Shakespeare, and it was the first time that I was like able to say, oh, this is not complicated. You can understand it if it's performed correctly. I've also seen, plays that were shot on American stages on like PBS, for example,
Yes.
Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods, and other shows that have been recorded and broadcast. And we don't think that's unusual or strange.
Yeah.
But somehow when we add the internet or the computer in, suddenly we're thinking that it's something new and different.
I think it's because in those days, television set was a gathering point, either of a family or friends or whatever. But just like it was a gathering point, like you needed to be in a room with a group of people to witness something. What has changed now is that you can pull out your smartphone, have that content brought to you so that you don't need to be in the room with the people to witness something on the screen. So what is shifting, I think, is this idea of gathering. And that's at the core of what theater is.
Mm-hmm.
It is a gathering point. We all come together to witness something as a group, as a collective.
Mm-hmm.
What internet provides us is the ability to witness the same thing as an individual. You don't need to gather in a living room of your best friend and with his mom and dad to witness a Hamlet. You can have it on your iPhone. And I think somewhere deep in our kind of collective consciousness, that is something that we might be afraid of. This idea that we are becoming extremely individual.
One of the things that I think about is all of the shows that I just mentioned, and a lot of the shows that I can think of that I've seen, whether broadcast from the National Theatre and movie theater or something like that, is they're filmed or recorded or broadcast with a live audience present. And so I hear the audience. I also have a sense that I'm having a different experience than that audience.
Mm-hmm.
The experience of watching theater on a screen is not going to be exactly the same as it is when you're in the room. And so they are different experiences, but they can be complementary as well. For example, sometimes when I've seen a show digitally, I do think to myself, man, I would love to be in that room, and I'll seek it out later on if I can. But at least I have the sense of what it was like to be in that room. But I think we have to acknowledge and accept that they are separate and different experiences. And when we can accept that, I think we might be more likely to embrace it broadly.
Well, exactly. And it's not that one experience is more true than the other. They're simply distinct. But just as you said, they can complement each other. They can go hand in hand together. So it is not about that we are talking about two different things. We are talking about the same thing. And when we accept this idea of togetherness that can exist outside of physical presence, then we will evolve into another, like a level of our consciousness, either as audience or theater creators. But the point is that nothing good will come out if we really focus ourselves on dividing those experiences. They have to be brought together. The idea of togetherness. That's all.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been with BirdLand Theatre?
I think it's been 7 years or something. Yeah.
Because I just had to check because you were, I believe, the dramaturg on one of my favorite theatrical experiences, which was back in 2011, which was Assassins.
Yes.
I went with a friend and we talked about that show for days afterwards. And it was pretty amazing to experience. And I know I think it was the second time that BirdLand had put on that show.
Yeah.
At that point. But what was, I mean, as the dramaturg, what was your part in putting that show together? This is the problem with technology is I stopped the recording by accident. So I was at your part as dramaturg on.
Yeah, I was a dramaturg, like a production dramaturg on Assassins, and that was really an incredible experience to be part of. Just gonna being surrounded with all those geniuses of theater coming together in one room to bring that show alive, and as a dramaturg, like my focus was just to make the show relevant to the moment when it's happening, to make the show be sure that it's resonating to what we feel at the moment. It speaks of the moment from the American past, but look what's happening right now. I think actually now would be the amazing moment to do the show again. But it was just and my experience with a musical theater up to that point was not that big. And so for me, it was also personally an extremely incredible opportunity to learn more about the form and to learn more about how this structure of musical theater actually works. And so I jumped on that opportunity, and we all created I think a really good theatrical experience for everyone.
It was pretty magical, I have to say, and it's it's hard to talk about something that people can't go and see, right? Because now it was in 2011, but it was pretty magical. I know that the show Assassins has not had a great experience trying to be produced on Broadway. Every time they try to produce it, there's some event in the world that makes it not a good time to do that show. So at least we got to do it here.
Yeah, well, it's and there is I don't know, I think here we felt a bit more free from what this giant of Sondheim that he is, and we felt a bit more liberated to really play with the material and to really explore how we feel about the subject matter and what is our personal relation to it. And I think that was the genius of Adam Brazier, that allowed everyone really to intimately and personally resonate with the material, instead of forcing them to fit into one image and one form that show needs to be. And I think that's why that show really had this incredible impact on audience, because they like performers, they all felt extremely intimately connected to what is going on.
Absolutely. I know that BirdLand has also, I mean, it might have been before your time, but BirdLand did a legendary production of The Last Days of Judas Iscariot, which is, I think, the first time we got to see that in Toronto, and it was done in the fermenting cellar in the distillery district, which was really before the distillery district was what it is now.
Yeah.
And that was, again, much like the way that Assassins was staged, this was like in an unusual space and put together. So that seems to be something that BirdLand is known for, is the unusual spaces.
Absolutely. Like yes, it is about finding spaces that actually resonate with material, but it is also this passion of producer of BirdLand Theatre, Zorana Kidd, that she has about bringing people together into spaces that are stripped of preconceived formality of theatrical venue. So when you invite someone to fermenting cellar, that's not a theater venue. That's a space. That's a space that we agreed we're gonna gather, that we all gonna be together. And there is something very raw about it, and a unique energy in it. And Zorana has this kind of crazy instinct about discovering those spaces and places when actually people can come together. And as much then it is about the show, it is also about something that is happening within an audience. The audience is connecting in a spaces that are not traditional theater spaces. So they need to start understanding each other, and then there is a show that comes to them, and then on top of it there is this dialogue actually that happens between audience and a performance within a space that is not traditional. And to me, that is the closest as we can get to a ritual in our time right now.
Yeah.
And like she has like, yeah. Please.
As you describe this, to me, it makes perfect sense why that is complementary to the work that you're doing, mixing theater and film and digital production. It's the same sort of changing this space, bringing it into an unusual space and allowing this new space to inform the production.
Yeah, it's like, I think we have lost a little bit of this idea of what our ritual is as a society, and like what is the myth in our society. And so when we create events like this, we are creating a mythology. We are creating a new way of understanding each other, because myths were created because we as a human race wanted to understand the world around us. And so if we start bringing that back in, either through the physical spaces or digital spaces, the core is creating this mutual ritual.
That's a really powerful thing, because generally in our day-to-day lives, we don't have ritual so much anymore. And on some level, I think we do crave it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's where theater comes in. And that's why throughout the history, as much as theater was celebrated, it was also prosecuted.
Sure.
Because it created this gathering point that can change a society, that can change the way how we perceive our reality.
Yeah.
And digital, again, gives us actually a much larger audiences than the actual physical spaces can.
Mm-hmm. There's also, I mean, just in terms of like the what theater can do is it can comment on things without necessarily obviously commenting on it. That's why in some places the theater is very highly regulated, because it's too dangerous to let something so that can be so immediate, that can't be edited and controlled in front of an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm stuck on this word, like what you just said, like it cannot be edited, because we are living at this moment. We are living an extremely edited reality, and theater has ability not just to show that, but to shift that. Because if we look again back throughout the history, nothing good has come out of edited society. Your edited society created only anxiety, then created resistance, and then there is a rebellion, and then you have a revolution. So what we have right now, like we have this idea that we cannot talk about certain things if they are not said in a certain way. But then if they are said in a certain way, that means that artist is obliged to follow a certain formula or certain set of rules to which he can say things or not. And that's a control. And that's when things start to get very troublesome.
I'd like to talk about your beginnings as an artist, as a theater creator. You mentioned seeing theater on the TV when you were growing up. Was that your first exposure to theater, and what made you want to be involved in theater?
Well, like when I was a kid, we had those regular visits to the theaters as a kind of school groups and everything. But what made me really start seriously thinking about it was this idea of connection between something that is happening in front of me and me who is watching it, who is witnessing it. And I felt extremely attracted to this idea to create some kind of a energy that will bring people together. And then I started doing different things. I did a little bit of a film and things like that, but theater was always there. Is this the most immediate experience of like simply being alive, and that fascinated me. Like, what is this thing that it's happening in front of me that makes me feel alive, more alive than I was like 20 minutes ago? And I always have that in me.
So you grew up in Serbia, is that right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
you came to Toronto. Was Toronto your first stop when you came to Toronto, or came to Canada?
Oh, no. My first stop was actually West Canada, Edmonton, Alberta. I came to Edmonton to do my master's in directing at the University of Alberta. And so I did my 2 years of the program there, and then I stayed like 2.5 years more in Edmonton, creating shows, participating at Edmonton Fringe. I had like 2 shows there. I had the first show I did for the Fringe there was Creation of the World and Other Businesses by Arthur Miller. And the second one was Anime, which was kind of science fiction thing, almost like a Romeo and Juliet meets Blade Runner. And then after that, I came to Toronto.
It's interesting you did a science fiction play, because I think that we don't, these days, we don't, in the theater, we don't play with genre. Like, we don't play with horror, we don't play with science fiction as much as they used to. And I think that we're missing out by not exploring those genres on the stage.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you, because I think genre gives you this very unique opportunity to start with a certain form and then expand it and change it, and to bring a completely different kind of content to the audience. And I think we are getting stuck in this idea of a theater as a self-expression device, which I'm not sure actually the theater is. In one way, it starts from there, but if it stays like that, then it becomes a very self-indulgent thing. And I think this self-indulgence and correctness in congratulating ourselves and our friends on what we created does not move us forward. And if we explore different genres, as you said, like science fiction, horror, like I cannot remember when was the last time when I saw actually the horror theater show. And I think if anything else, horror as a genre is the closest we can get to the Greek catharsis at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, there's something that magical that happens with horror, because there's a Toronto theater company called Eldritch Theater. People who listen to this podcast regularly, they know about my love for Eldritch Theater. Because they do a lot of horror-based stuff. and it's well done, and it's certainly it does all the things that you mentioned, because the genre of horror is one. Yeah, when you watch it on a screen, you're separate from it, right? Yes, you might jump, but you're separate from it in a way that when it's happening in the same room that you're in, you cannot be separate from it. And so the reaction to a frightening element is more visceral than when we just watch it on a screen. And it's a fascinating thing to experience when that happens.
Yeah. It's well, we are going back to what we said a minutes ago. This idea of closeness, of immediacy of the moment, of the immediacy of the co-presence. Because show is not something that is there to be performed. Show is something that is a living entity, that is addressing you as another living entity. Yeah. And those two entities need to find a way to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And it is fine if they don't understand each other. It is absolutely fine if they hate each other. And it's also fine if they love each other. Because that's what makes them alive.
There's a fascinating thing, I think, that in a lot of cases we really want our theater to be everything tied up in a nice little bow. We don't like rough edges. We want everything really, really kind of a little too molded. And there's something about seeing something that is a little rough around the edges that actually, I think, feels more theatrical.
Yeah.
You know? It does. Things don't have to. Everything doesn't have to be tied up in a little bow. It can be rough. It can be a little bit messy, and the messy can kind of make it even more exhilarating.
Yeah, because that messy part is probably the one that we connect with this idea of truth. Because it's not perfect. And we know it. And we know that we, as humans, we are not perfect. And so that's to what we relate. And, art starts at the moment when life and nature cannot explain themselves to us. So we need theater to explain life to us. And if it's going to be tied in a nice sparkly bow, then we know it's not real.
Yeah. I wonder if sometimes that's what is sort of, that's encouraged, or it's sought, or we think it's sought, because that allows people to separate from it and know it's not real. Whereas if it is rough, then even that roughness, those rough edges, make it feel more immediate for the audience.
Again, this idea of immediacy and how something evolves in front of you as audience member, and when you're watching a show, you are witnessing a kind of a evolution of something that started at the point A and it's gonna end at the point B, and you know that. But what you're looking for is this moment in that evolution when this evolution becomes part of you. And now, going back to this digital thing, is that this, like the digital actually now allows this imperfection to happen in a real time.
Mm.
And we accept it.
Yeah.
We say, oh, sorry, connection was bad.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, no. Are you still there? No.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? And we accept that and we move on. But just that little moment of, oh, sorry, can you hear me? Makes the connection authentic. And like I think that's what we are looking for in theater, and that's what I'm hoping that in this post-COVID or whatever call it world, that will spill into theater. This idea that you can check yourself in within the performance. Am I still there? Are you still there? Oh, okay, good. We are moving on. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Too many things to think about.
I mean, there's always lots to think about. It's awesome. I would like you to tell me a little bit about your work in the intersection of mindfulness and art practice.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I was always interested in that. I was always interested in this idea from where creativity comes from. Because I always felt that this concept of being talented and gifted somehow is not right. Because I always believe that we carry in ourselves everything that we need. And it's about simply awakening those segments in us. And how I started with that was really through my practice, when I working with different sets of creative people, when I witness different kind of blocks that I experienced throughout the process and everything, I always try to provide them with some kind of tools how to overcome them and accept them as a necessary part of creation. And from there I started thinking, okay, maybe I can really articulate this into a certain form, and practicing meditation for a certain number of years. I felt a connection between the creative process and meditation, and then I started articulating that slowly into something that I can teach, that I can coach people to go on with. And that's how I created this little thing that I'm calling the 7 cycles of you. And the reason why I'm calling it that is because it's really just simply the 7 circles of a certain exercises that you can do. And in all of those circles, the center of the circle is you, at the same time as a source and as a creation. And it's been fun doing that, because I've been doing that with a mature artist, but I also was I was coaching children with the same thing, and it's amazing. So that's how I'm there.
Yeah. Now, if somebody was interested in your course, where would they find it?
Well, they can reach out either through BirdLand and our Facebook page, or they can look for a Facebook page of Digital Dream Society and simply leave a message there, and I'll get back to them.
Nice.
And it's simple as that.
Awesome. Well, Stefan, thank you so much for talking with me today. I've really appreciated your time, and I've really loved this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this.